Jeez. GRC Mafia, welcome to the party, pals. Definitely here to break down barriers, foster collaboration and community, working towards a more secure future for everybody. Some of the different guidelines. So if you guys would like to come up to the stage, I definitely want everybody to feel encouraged to do so. Definitely ask questions, share resources along the way. And then also, if you guys wanted to share your LinkedIn profile or other social media, along with any like resource links, the best place to do that is inside of our Discord server and inside of the live chat channel. I just dropped the link for the for the Discord server itself. Also, don't share anything that you don't want to be public. If you happen to do so, reach out to me on Discord, or you can contact me at contact@studygrc.org. Let's see. Welcome to the party, pal. Robin, B-Dubs, Cam. We got Albright. Bam. GRC Mafia. And then, of course, we have B-Dubs' website where she posts a blog every single Monday, typically regarding cybersecurity GRC, and then also the CIS SP study group that we had last night, for an example. So Tuesdays and Saturdays, she's running the CIS SP study group as well. Those links are also in the chat. And then, like, PBO was talking about some weird thing last night, you know, that nobody has ever heard of. And so PBO's channel's there as well. Welcome to the party, pal. And then, of course, we have our website too, studygrc.org, for the other platforms. Our calendar and then also our resources page are some of the primary areas there. All right, let's go ahead and get transitioned over here. There was a slight delay because this time of year they're, you know, testing out tornado sirens and so forth. Like 30 seconds before I was about to hit go live, then the siren started going off, and I was like, okay, it'll end any second now. And then it just kept going and going and going. All right, let me go ahead and get this pulled up. Oh, that's the button I'm looking for. How's everybody's week going? We are halfway through. And then also, if you guys did not notice, we do have another stream at noon. So it's 11:10 Central Time now. So here in 50 minutes, there's also an occupational safety one at noon. So pretty much until then, we'll just hang out and so forth, probably. Worst case scenario, we'll talk about NIST. That's actually something I did not look at for this, is if there was NIST documentation on server logs. It would not surprise me if there's some type of standard. Have you come across that, PBO, for a NIST doc for server log? I mean, there's definitely like custody handling and that stuff. Yeah, I caught part of PBO's live stream last night, but he definitely runs a late night party. So there's so much different information that's out there. There's actually a course here too that I think is really neat that I'm going to share as well. One of the big things that I wanted to highlight is that all of the systems have logs on your mobile device, on your smartwatch, your smart TV, you know, your Windows computer, Mac, Linux, whatever you're running, your router. All of these different connected devices have logs of some sort. Like even some of the different smart LED lighting I've seen has logs as well, where although it may reset on reboot or otherwise. And logs play a very crucial role in a lot of different things. Doing diagnostics, you could also, one of the courses here, I'll actually just go ahead and drop it now. Let me pull this up. So Cybrary, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They have this identifying web attacks through logs course. So it's about 2 hours in length. It's beginner friendly. And then also it gives you a really awesome walkthrough, you know, as a SOC analyst, going through the server logs manually and identifying web attacks. There are some very similar labs related to this as well on Let's Defend. I've gone through their SOC pathway on Let's Defend, and they have a really good example of actually going onto the virtual machine, going into the server logs itself, and then identifying, they literally ask you, they're like, is this a threat? Does this need to go to tier 2? Are they still on the system? And this is also a free course. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to share this, because for a couple hours, this is a great project that you can go through and do. Oh, and look at that. Future Quest Technologies. NIST does provide comprehensive documentation regarding logs. The primary resource is 892, Guide to Computer Security Log Management. Bam. See, I knew NIST would have something. And I'm sure PBO can talk about, STIGs, hardening, and so forth as well. I kind of feel like it's a dying art at this point. So all of these devices are collecting logs at all times for everything that you do and what they do on everything. But we never seem to actually see them anymore. And you could actually open up like your event viewer on Windows. There's a couple other options too on Mac. I think you might have to. I think you go to the system console. So you open up the console and then you just open up the system.log. There's also logs underneath, like library logs folder. Kind of like with Linux, where you're looking at the var/log folder, where you'll find an assortment of different types of logs as well. That's what I should have done, is pulled up a Linux VM to just list out the directory for that. Let me see if I could find a really good diagram for that. I didn't think about that portion. I don't see a great example here. I was hoping there'd be some type of diagram. And so I'll swap over to this. On the right-hand side, you can see that that's like the folder structure for Linux or otherwise. But I was hoping that there'd be some type of diagram for the var and then log. So you would go underneath the var folder, and then there's also a log folder as well. But I don't see a very good diagram or anything for it. That would have been a really good reference. And next time. You guys could also do that pretty easily as well, whether you do it through the Explorer or through the terminal. Yes, that is correct. So Cam, this course is completely free. So they have this course marked free, identifying web attacks through logs. And it's a 2-hour course that anybody can go through. And it gives you a walkthrough of what logs you would look at on a server and manually see these server logs. And what I was going into is the fact that we don't really work with the logs as much, it seems. Like I see a ton of people who are going through and getting practice with Splunk or Elk or Wazoo or these different interfaces and so forth, which do provide an option to look at the logs as well in raw format typically, but a lot of the stuff is just visualized now. And I don't know. I mean, going through and just browsing your event viewer could be interesting as well. The event viewer on Windows, so you can just search for event viewer, and then it provides you a few different options for Windows logs, application and service logs, and a few other options as well. And you could just go through and select what area you want to look in. And it provides a visual interface GUI for looking at these different logs that your system has collected. That's one of the options there. But then why is it so important anyways? Well, one of the big things that I see is just like redundancy. If your SIEM's down, then what are you going to do? Especially, I think that's something that should be accounted for as well. I haven't looked at any commercialized playbooks or otherwise, but solely relying on a SIEM for the information could be a negative side effect. That's definitely siloing everything into one area. And that's great, and it could make things a lot better. But then what if that system goes down or otherwise? And you'll see, like with some of the blue team training that I have gone through with Let's Defend and then also on Try Hack Me, is you'll end up escalating to a tier 2, or they'll even escalate it to a tier 3 for additional evaluation, analysis, going through the actual system, ensuring that whatever occurred is no longer happening, that there's no longer a compromise or there wasn't, and so forth. And that's when they'll actually dig in and actually look at these logs and so forth as well. But I also find it interesting. And so what I originally was on is this CrowdStrike log files explained. I think this is a really good article as well. So like this is an example of a particular log file. And one reason why I wanted to cover this is just because like it's in English most of the time, some of the time, you know, we got a timestamp, you know, it's telling us what service it's doing or what or otherwise. Oh, look at that configuration notice. All right. So ASL module for Apple's CDS scheduler claims selected messages. So then what the hell does that mean? And there was a really good resource I used to have. I haven't been able to find it again. There was like a directory for log file examples. I think it was through Cisco. I'm going to have to find it again. And then I'm going to drop this article as well. If you guys want to check this out, we can go ahead and skim through this as well. If your SIEM is down, NIST wants you to stop processing. What? What do you mean by stop processing? They want you to shut down your operations? Is that what you mean by that, PBO? Yeah, no worries, Sierra. PBO, you're gonna have to explain that more. I am confused by that statement. NIST wants you to stop processing. And so they list out some of the different things where logs may come from, like I was talking about a moment ago: your networks, your servers, web services, firewalls, endpoints, databases, containers, apps. Everything is creating logs for the most part, or at least it should be. If it's not, then that's a little sus. And they have this nice little cloud here for all of these different devices as well. Who uses logs? DevOps, DevSecOps, security, IT analysts. Different types of logs. We have event logs, server logs, system logs, authorization logs, and access logs. So like when we log into our system, that's one of the things you could view through that event viewer on Windows is the login, the access logs. Change logs, different application changes or file changes, availability logs, resource logs, threat logs. Threat logs contain information about system, file, or application traffic. So lots of different types of logs. And then also I think one of the biggest issues is the different application logs. So then you have different types of logs for different applications, different software like Apache or OpenSSL or SSH. And so those create logs on their own as well. And they look different than everything else for the most part. Some of the different challenges that they mention here too. Volume, lots and lots of logs. How can an organization manage the sheer volume of data? Especially in the business environment, like just your own personal computer has a ton of logs. Now, multiply that by thousands of devices or cloud systems and all kinds of different things. And that's why SIEMs exist. That's also why businesses should be using SIEMs, is to aggregate those logs into a centralized location, and then also have alerts set up for different types of events and reviewing these things as well. If almost everything produces a log, how can we manage? Yeah, that's definitely an issue. Standardization. Unfortunately, not all logs follow a uniform format. Depending on the log type, the type of log, the data may be structured, semi-structured, or unstructured. In order to observe and derive valuable insights from all server files, all log files in real time, the data requires a level of normalization. And I think that's one of the biggest issues, is that just looking at a log file could be very confusing. Let me pull this up here. So, so like this is an example log file. So communication server, IP diagnosis guide. And I could drop the link to this as well. They have several different examples here on IBM. And so this gives you a really good example of like, what the hell? So if we're looking at a log like this is still considered like semi-structured, at least, because it's not just all on one single line or otherwise. It does have some type of formatting or structure to it. But a lot of this information, you know, what is it even supposed to mean? And that's where breaking it down and, you know, looking at it really comes in. And I guess this would also really just depend on what services you're utilizing as well. So there's so many different things out there that are keeping track of logs that I find it kind of unreasonable to be able to, you know, be well versed on every single type from every service. But then also, like, a really good example of this too is nowadays we have AI. And so definitely if you're going to leverage AI, you don't put sensitive information in there. I would not take a production server, logs or otherwise, and throw that into AI, that's especially if it's not authorized. So maybe your company has, you know, some type of company Copilot or Gemini or otherwise that's authorized to take that type of sensitive data or otherwise, but standard ChatGPT is not. And let me pull this up. So I just copied and pasted that portion right there, and then I'm just going to ask it, you know, explain the different sections of this log to me, for me to learn what it means. And then hopefully it actually responds with some useful information. So RSVP implementation, possibly used in a quality of service enabled network or application stack. RSVP is signaling protocol designed to reserve resources across the network, often used in multimedia and void context. So we got our timestamps, and then we also have info, trace, and event. And so now it's breaking down the log levels. So the info, the trace, and event. And if we go back to this server log section here, we could see trace, info, and event as well. And so then this just gives us a little bit of information on how to break this down and what it actually means. And I find this to be very useful. And at least from what I've seen on the few times that I've used it, it's pretty accurate as well, or at least points me in the right direction. Yeah, one of the key things to also mention is that, yeah, it's neat to go into the logs, but also it's, you know, especially from a GRC standpoint, I think we're more often going to see logs as evidence than anything else. Or even configuration files as well could be in a, you know, JSON or XML format as well. Oh, awesome. PBO is going to come up and explain what the hell he was talking about. Yeah, there's the stage link if anybody did want to come up. And then Josh mentions logging AI human interested is the flow going forward. I mean, that's what I see, especially with the different tools that are available now. Like I believe it's called Drop Zone that has like SOC analyst AI, and that's what I foresee moving forward is AI is definitely going to be leveraged for this, especially. Why is this not loading for me? Drop Zone. I'm pretty sure it was called Drop Zone AI. There we go. So like Drop Zone AI, they leverage AI to for a SOC analyst, an AI SOC analyst. They aggregate all of the files together, or you can add it into your SIEM, and then it's going to go through and analyze these server logs and look for issues or the alerts from your SIEM. And it could even take automated actions for you as well. I would definitely still consider this type of service in, still development for sure. But I definitely see that to be the route that we're headed. All right, PBO, explain yourself.
Maybe I need to do a better job. Especially the IRS, they believe that if your SIM's not working, a nation state took it offline because they're about to hack you. So if your SIM is, our number one problem in old days is it was just filling up. So if we ran out of disk space, theoretically your SIM is down. The IRS said you need to stop processing because we can't track what your transactions are doing. So if a bad cat came and steal it, we have no forensics because it's not going to your SIM. So, but the big bosses like you, they're like, nah, we about to get $34 billion in 3 months. If the SIM's down, we're not shutting down. So we always accepted that risk for that. But yeah, if your SIM is down especially from an IRS perspective, they believe the bad guys took it down and they want to be able to track every transactions that comes through your organization. I think the cloud is making that a lot easier. Shout out to Azure and especially AWS, because Glacier, I mean, it takes you 12 hours to get your logs back, but it's like a penny a terabyte or something crazy. So you can keep all that data. And the thing I think are helping and what you brought out is Sentinel and AWS GuardDuty reads through your logs off of the MITRE attacks. So they take care of a lot of that heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, and I find that pretty crazy, to be honest, because like honestly, if I was a threat actor and I'm targeting a system, I already know that they're going to be utilizing a SIM. So then I would purposely be trying to target that SIM to take that offline so I can continue my attack.
That's why the IRS said what they said. Right? So, but the SIM is usually downstream. You usually don't have a lot of touch points to it. So we're gonna put it on another
hopefully.
system, another network. So, and the cool thing is, and I did a couple of videos from the stick perspective. When you look at Windows 2022, it tells you every event you should be logging, how you should be logging, and when it should be logging. The databases tell you all of that because there's a lot of things you can log. So, what does NIST and what I'm IRS especially, what do they believe is important? So they tell you what to log, so you don't have to guess. But that's in each one of the infrastructures. If you run a Palo Alto and Cisco, you got to log. If you're in AWS, VPC, EC2s, you got to log. SQL Server, you got Oracle. So it tells you what to log. And in the old days, that was a lot. But with the big time SIEMs, especially if you're pushing in the cloud, it's a lot easier to handle that type of volume. Then once again, with Sentinel, GuardDuty, shout out to Splunk, the big daddy, if you got money. They do all that MITRE once again attacks and horizontal attacks and vertical attacks. So they looking for those spots on how to attack. So
yeah, I find that kind of crazy that they would that it would be recommended to shut the process down, but yeah, I mean it makes like I can see the thought process behind it. Oh yeah, and also I was going to mention you were talking about how the SIM would typically be downstream or on its own network or otherwise.
yeah.
I'm sure that they would utilize the term air gapped, right?
No, it's not gonna be air gap. No. I gave a guy a heart attack. I guess one of my neighbors is a security guy, and some security told him 100% air gap, you're safe. I like that's not true. So I sent him a couple air gap attacks. So he was like, they told me it's 100%. I'm like, no, I'm not, because you got to update your software. If you don't, you're vulnerable. And if you do, you're vulnerable because you're hooking it to the internet to get your
Yeah.
updates. So uh, which ones you looking? Is that 92?
Yeah, so this is
Okay.
the table of contents for 92.
What year is that? Real quick, what year is that?
Oh, come on,
You know I
PBO.
gotta
Are we
know
going
the
to go
year,
through this
man. I think that's
again?
old. I think that's old. Come on,
2006.
shut it on down. We ain't reading that. Shut it down. I knew it. Shout out to my man. As soon as I said I remember 92, I thought it was 2010. Come on, man. That's 2006, man. That's older than you almost, man. Come on.
Oh my, I'm not that young.
Come on, man.
Um, I
Boo.
was definitely still a minor though.
Facts. Boo.
Um,
Boo.
well, and still, one of the big things that I defend on the NIST documents is that a lot of this stuff is still applicable though.
We gotta stop that. No, I agree with you. But once again, I think we need to stop. You need to touch it and freshen it up. What's that? 19 years old? Come on, man. We gotta at least touch it.
Hey, you know, NIST just needs more people and resources. That's what it comes down to. You know, they have so many. Just under cybersecurity, it's like 1,400 publications or something, maybe more.
Something crazy. Yeah, but you know, they go into some esoteric things too in there, though. Some stuff you would never kind of touch or.
One of the irritating parts is this is so old that I can't click on the.
So that's my only thing. I remember looking at 92. Once again, I thought it was 2010. That's my only. And like you said, a lot of it's still relevant, but it's probably not even talking cloud in there. 2006. So that once again.
Now I'm a little curious.
So yeah,
there is not a single mention of cloud.
So man, come on. I don't. I'm not gonna say it's not relevant, but it's not relevant. My 2 cents, though. My 2 cents.
Yeah, back then the cloud was still, just a thought.
No, like Oracle used to talk about the cloud. They said it was a toy. Nobody would ever use it. Shout out to Larry Ellison.
How's their stock?
It's doing well because they got part of that $9 billion government contract. They awarded to 4 companies, and I was surprised they got that award. And a lot of people use it because Oracle was the first enterprise database, and it was secure for DoD type work. They used all that money. I think they bought 300 companies over the last 5 years. Just buying stuff. So,
I find it crazy. So many websites do not have dark mode. But then also like a lot of these different services, like I would say Apache is a pretty common one. What Nginx is that?
Yeah, I think it's Nginx, but I don't.
Yeah, that's the other option that's very common for web servers or otherwise. And
Tomcat,
like they have the documentation that actually teaches you, so you could look up a lot of these services or otherwise, and actually, especially the commercial side, and be like, how the hell do I read your logs?
And shout out to Space Tacos. My bad, I'm stepping on you a little bit. I sent Apache Stigs inside Space Tacos Discord. So she was having some Stig stuff. So I think I put Oracle database, and I think I put Apache Stigs in there. I need to put the rest of them. So yeah, I used to do this for 5 years at DoD. Spin up Apaches, Tomcats, hooking an Oracle database. So logging was real big back then. Back to you.
Yeah, I was just pulling up this other resource. So I've never heard of Blue Cape, but Sierra.
I seen her give a shout out. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah,
shout out.
She mentions them, and they do have some type of like free tier as well.
Okay. Shout out to Blue Cape.
So maybe give it a look. I have not checked them out before, but they do have like a free courses section, and they have some type of free tier as well.
Put my banner up, Chris. I need my banner up. I'm about to say something.
Oh
Sierra, we respect Blue Cape. We need sponsorship, so send Blue Cape our way. Shout out to Blue Cape. Tell them we're looking for sponsorships. Go ahead, Chris. I know you don't like to. We kind of e-bagging on the black side.
Shout out to PBO.
Yeah, we e-bagging. Shout out to Blue Cape. We looking for some sponsors. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead. I need my little banner.
Oh gosh. Go ahead. Yeah, personally, I like Let's Defend. I still have a subscription to Let's Defend. I still have a streak going on there too. But they are extremely, I would consider Let's Defend very limited in their free tier. So But there's some really unique things with Let's Defend. But yeah, like PBO said, we are looking for sponsorship and so forth. So I'm not going to pull that one up, I guess. And there's all kinds of different options out there. Like I really think that a really good option is just looking at your event viewer and just seeing how some of it's laid out. But it is definitely important. I think I kind of feel like people don't really pay enough attention to the fact that actually reading the logs themselves anymore,
Right.
unless they're doing an investigation for like tier 2 or otherwise.
Yeah, I guess my only, not a big disagreement is it's just so many and the volume's just so huge sometimes. So if you don't use it, another thing I want to add, and you brought up a good point, is your KPIs for your organization. So you can look through your logs. If somebody trying to log onto your website 10 times in 30 seconds, that's probably a bot attack. You might want to highlight that into a dashboard or something. So what are KPIs in your organization that you want to look for to spin up through those logs? And I think that's a good part. Like we got these logs, we got to start using them. So what are your KPIs? What are you looking for? What type of attacks are you looking for? Hopefully you, once again, you have a SIEM and you have some of that built-in capabilities to help you. But
what was the SIEM on AWS called? Was that GuardDuty?
there's two. No, it's GuardDuty's the Sentinel.
Configuration.
No, it's CloudWatch. CloudWatch is their normal one for their SIEM. Then they have a built-in elk cache. So CloudWatch is kind of for your tenant, but if you got multiple tenants and multiple accounts, you can send it to elk cache, and that's their kind of Splunk version of that, one centralized to get it off the servers and off of your tenant.
Well, and then also, like, one of the things I wanted to mention is like XML or JSON file format too, like for evidence, as far as like configuration files occur. It seems like that would be a potential to come across. So
Yeah.
I find those to be pretty readable though. Let me see if I can find an example here.
I think Josh is correcting me. I think it's open search, and I'm confusing that with elk cache. I think there's a few that run on AWS. There's a few that runs on AWS. I could be confusing them, but CloudWatch is the main one that pushes it to the SIEM.
Yeah. Well, and like this is just a single page here. So config.xml file on some Windows Learn here. And we could see here that, I don't know how easy we can see that. Error control, file error. Mm-hmm. The error code is 33. The users.
It looks like
non-fatal registry.
Yeah, it looks like because in Apache we split our logs up into privileged and non-privileged logs, depending on what we were logging. Then you brought up a good point. A lot of people sleep on is your application teams got different levels. If you look in Tomcat, if you put up to level 4, you start spitting out SSNs and addresses. So you got to tell development because they need it for logging and track it down. So you got to communicate to them when you can cut that on and when and where you can cut that on. Because sometimes they do need to debug, but
I mean that's a pretty important mention, yeah. Because there's different tiers of logging. And then like I heard somebody talk about before how they like set up a home lab or something, and then they just like enabled all logging on everything. They had like over 1 million logs like in less than 24 hours or something.
Logs they might be logging and rolling them over too. But yeah, just the level of logging and how you log, and that's why if you're not pushing it to the cloud, you won't be able to do that on prem. You don't have enough disk space. And the cost of that would be, once again, astronomical.
And another thing when we're looking at like the SIEMs and logs is the data retention. So data retention backup. Is PBO going to do a SIEM setup in AWS video?
I've talked about CloudWatch. I might do one. I need to go see if it's open search or elk cache. I'm Googling now. I could be co-mingling in my, my old age. I might do one because that's I talked about it on the Stig. I don't know if I set it up. I walked through it and talking about it from a Stig and what should be cut on and what not, but that's probably a couple years old. So yeah, I might do one. I might upgrade
Damn.
to CloudWatch and put GuardDuty on top of it, doing some of the minor investigations on top of it. I think that might be interesting.
Yeah, and so this is another
Oh, it's not
example
Red Hat.
from Red Hat. And
Red
so
Hat.
the best way I can think of explaining it is like
Yeah.
XML and JSON are seem to be common formats that are still considered human readable configuration files, and they could also be actual data sets. But for configuration file wise, it's still semi human readable, easier to understand than a lot of things, and then the application can also read that information too. So like this is just a sample XML configuration for logging for Red Hat JBoss application platform.
JBoss underneath is Apache and Tomcat. They just took two open source things and made them easier to use. Because I used to do JBoss shit 15 years ago. So yeah, we used to put our Java in JBoss. So I'm quite familiar.
And
with
that's just Red Hat's version of it.
Yeah, what happened is Apache and Tomcat from the Apache consortium, it was just hard to work and it was hard to patch. So JBoss put the open source together, put their wraparound on it, and they made it a lot easier to update and do enterprise management on it. Because a lot of times when you're in I call it the Apache consortium, it's kind of open source, small companies, easy to use. You're doing a lot of manual stuff. JBoss said it where you hit a couple buttons and you could patch it. Trying to patch Apache server, it was you had to bind and compile. It was crazy. So JBoss kind of made it more enterprise worthy and easier to use. But if you look underneath the hood, it was just Apache.
Yeah, and I've heard really great things about Red Hat in enterprise, particularly.
Oh, Red Hat. Yeah, they're one of the first. Yeah, I can say that.
Like enterprise
Yeah,
distros.
they made open source to they made open source easy to run in an enterprise. They gave you patching, they gave you security, they gave you updates and made them easy to run. So you didn't have to be this guru on every facet of Linux trying to upgrade Apache. And so yeah, they were the first ones with the Red Hat Linux. They made it easy to run open source inside of an enterprise.
Yeah, and they have a whole suite of their own tooling, it seems like, as well. I think you could get like a developer version of Red Hat, but then they have their actual paid version for business as well.
Yeah, you gotta have paid versions to do business in feds. Because we want one throat to choke, and if we get a security vulnerability, we need that fixed ASAP. You can't diddle daddle like you in the open source community. So
I mean, I was just gonna make a joke about how it's not like the government's behind on updates and patches, anyways, right?
that is a good point. That is a good point. But they would be further behind. That's a good point. And the good thing though is, yeah, we had a lot of technical debt at DoD. That was kind of one of my things, trying to get everything to a modern application, modern web server, and just trying to get it done. But you got a lot of legacy Java apps. You couldn't update it because you would break the Java because they weren't keeping their modules updated inside the Java of what they were importing. So you would try to put it on modern stuff and it would break it. So
alrighty then. Let's see here. Yeah, and then we'll be bringing this to an end here in just a few minutes. I wanted to end this a few minutes earlier than noon or 1 p.m. Eastern, just so that way I can get over into the other stream as well. Let me pull this up.
somebody going live at 1?
Yeah, so I'm pulling this up here.
Okay.
So yeah, here in 13 minutes, then we'll have Matthew back again talking about safe driving awareness. I have
Okay.
absolutely no idea. I don't even know. Um, but this is definitely along the lines of, trying to showcase how GRC is not just cybersecurity.
Thanks.
As PBO has a stroke over here.
No, no, I've come to that realization, but I just try to stay in my lane. But
Yeah, and also going a little bit off topic as well is I've been doing a lot more research into enterprise risk management and integrated risk management. So ERM and IRM, and it's actually really cool. So enterprise risk management for risk management company wide, which is typically not associated with GRC. You'll have a GRC team that's working on governance, risk, and compliance, but then they may manage a ERM program. But then also now, this is only for massive enterprises. Then you'll be looking at integrated risk management, where you're actually integrating risk-based decisions at the lowest levels. So like when an employee goes off and requests PTO or something, there would be risk-related questions that would need to be answered or accounted for. Like, oh, do we have somebody else cross-trained? What is, are they taking too much of this time off? Should we be suspicious because they're working on sensitive projects and now they're taking a trip to Korea or China or something? And yeah, integrated risk management. It is a amazing deep dive, Space Tacos. I was deep diving on the company culture aspect for 850 and running off of that. And then I also got kind of roped into integrated risk management. And I think that's also part of the future moving forward as well, as we're just killing a few more minutes at the end here, is integrating those risk-based decisions at the lowest levels throughout. PBO is going to be like, oh, ain't nobody got time for that.
no,
But
I didn't say that. I said you were you close. I just said I don't see small to medium sized company mature enough doing that in the real world. But you're right. I think we need to do it. I just don't see it. That's
we could work
but
towards that. Well,
like I said,
and one of the interesting aspects is you try to integrate it into the actual existing processes. So like when somebody applies for PTO, that's as simple as asking a question like, are they working on any sensitive projects? You can ask where are they going? Like, oh, you're going on vacation. Now you also catch the barrier where maybe they don't have to disclose that. But
as you say, you gonna have to tiptoe around that. You breaking out
yeah.
kind of HR rules.
Well, and there's a lot of different examples of that too. Like even security cameras, for an example. All these companies have security cameras, but how many of them are actually watching or reviewing, access logs to a room, auditing those?
No, I think, we talked about this. You have security, you got compliance. A lot of times they're separate. I think the cameras a lot of times are a compliance checkbox. Like you said, I don't think we review. You review them when something happens, right? But you don't review. You don't actively
Correct.
review them. The cool thing now is with AI. Shout out to AWS. They have their recognition. It can kind of tell you what people are doing, if they're smiling or not, if they're acting suspicious. So you can get a lot of AI checking that for you in the background, though.
Yeah, and if you guys would like to, I would love to get somebody on board, to do a talk or otherwise regarding enterprise risk management. So let me know. I haven't really looked around too much, but there are people who specialize with enterprise risk management itself.
Well, the guy last night was doing it. I can't think of his name. I think that would be the guy.
Well, come on, PBO.
Let me look up his name. He was hitting me
Yeah,
up in Discord. He's the guy. He was doing the big company stuff. We had a great conversation. I've been in a little enterprise risk. Save V. Ain't that was
yeah,
his name?
save
Save
V.
V. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that would
no,
be
I
the
know who you're talking.
guy. Facts.
Yeah, I mean,
Facts.
he's definitely strong on the business side of things
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And the people that I've talked to, um, and yeah, Cam mentioned how can AI determine the likelihood of a throat punch?
It can, man. Well, I don't know. I need to. They said a lot of the big companies were cheating on that. They were the grocery store where you put stuff in there, it would automatically charge you. They said India was going through reviewing all all the stuff for like 12 hours a day to make sure they were tracking stuff. So I guess it wasn't working as well as I thought it was.
And also, Josh makes a really good mention here too about I don't think there's a bunch of or I definitely think that there's a bunch of overlap there with traditional cyber GRC.
It is.
And that's like my frustrating part is that at least in our communities and our circles that I'm a part of, it seems like everybody associates GRC with cyber, but there's so much more than that. And that's what I'm trying to bring more awareness to, is that governance, risk management, and compliance existed independently on their own for a long time. GRC is just developing a program organizationally wide that combines those three. And but there's such a huge focus for cyber or information security on the technology side. But also it makes sense because that's such a huge factor in today's world. Like, what business doesn't rely on technology now? Like,
Yeah,
that's
but
why I feel like it's such an important, a large portion of it.
my 2 cents. I think the thing, especially like you said in banking, is the risk people talk about mostly is financial risk. So if you the meetings I go in, they start with financial risk. So now that financial risk could be this system is using a database and this database has a CVE right that rolls up. But when a lot of times when you talk about risk, they talk about financial risk, then business operational risk before they get to cyber. Cyber is just the toys that IT uses to do that funny stuff. So um, that's kind of how I see in the thing. Shout out to my man Say V. He does an excellent job. Is most CIOs and CISO don't speak business. So if you don't speak business, the business will ignore you. It will ignore you. So I think that's the thing that IT still struggle with how to roll that up into business terms. And I mean, I always talk about business impact. I talk about that in business terms. We're collecting taxes. We have
Mm-hmm.
systems that help us collect taxes. But when we go into C-suite, we're talking about collecting taxes, doing refunds, because those are business objectives, not that we got a CVE in a database, a MongoDB database. So I think that communication kind of hurts a little bit. My 2 cents.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I think it makes sense. And I think another struggle point is just that it varies from one business to another. Um, I think the lack of, I mean, it's kind of infuriating to an extent because with how many standards are out there already and how little of a unified standard across the board for GRC there is, um,
Well,
it's just surprising.
Well, I think all of those were developed stovepipe. Like they said, banking did their own, finance did their own, DOD did their own, HIPAA, High Trust did their own. So everybody kind of because
Yeah.
sometimes those compliances, what you would do for a SOC and what you do for HIPAA. So they all kind of got developed in the stuff. Shout out to banking. I was looking at some FinRec for financial credit reporting. So PBL was doing that for privacy. So there's a ton of stuff out there that's done, per domain, per business domain. So I think obviously that's why you guys shout out, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
business speak is money. And then also like people are saying banking is big with GRC, healthcare is big with GRC and so forth.
mhm.
Um, there's plenty of statistics that are out there that is showcasing that GRC has been steadily growing and is expected for pretty substantial growth
Yeah.
over the next 5 years as well. So
Oh,
like one of the last ones I saw was 2025 to 2020 or 2030. It's expected like a 60% growth in the GRC industry
mhm, mhm.
over the next 5 years, which seems to line up. People are taking it more serious.
Well, the reason why they're taking this more serious is The fines are bigger. I think HIPAA's definitely stepping out, giving out fines. Shout out to GDPR. GDPR, they lighten people up with their fines. They be hitting people with $900 million, but Microsoft just pulled it out their sock. Google was like, we got money for days. So I think those things, and every state now have their own safe harbor. So I think they're
Yeah.
starting to push back. So I think each one of those industries or services or agencies are asking for those type of compliance. So I think it's going to grow because people know those fines are coming and they're real. So
Yeah, and then we're going to bring this to an end. And then one of the last things I just wanted to share is just this cyber thing. For a couple-hour course on identifying a web attack through logs, I think it's a really great opportunity. I think it would probably be worth time if you guys want to take a look at that. And then we're testing a new thing out with YouTube as well. So when I end this video, it should push you guys over to the next one, which will be going live here in just a couple minutes. I'm going to also drop a link out to that as well. But I hope to see you guys over there. Thank you guys for hopping in. Thank you, PBO, for hopping into the panel here. Dropping your knowledge without throwing fists today too.
I'll love. But yeah, I might talk a little bit about those Friday. Those different compliances. There's so many out there.
Oh,
Kind
yeah.
of what goes to what. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for hopping in. GRC Mafia.